Welcome back to the Customer Success Festival APAC. I hope you enjoyed the event so far. Before we dive into the next session, again, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all partners and speakers. We cannot do this without you. If you really like the content, please subscribe to our CSC membership, where you can get loads of templates, framework, on-demand videos, and be able to rewatch all the presentation sessions for this event. So head over to customersuccesscollective.com and treat yourself there. So sit back, and here's the next session. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Customer Success Festival APAC Day 2. And again, it's my honor to present you the next speaker, Rahul, the Senior Customer Success Manager APAC from Microsoft. Hi Rahul, how are you doing?
Hey Ryan, good seeing you again.
It's good to have you here, and then we look forward to your session, Adoption and Change Management in Customer Success. Please take it from here. Thanks, buddy.
Super, thanks. I hope you can hear me okay, Ryan?
Yeah, if you can speak a little bit louder, that'd be awesome.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah, cool.
Okay, super. Hi everyone, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining in. My name is Rahul, and I'll be covering what we at Microsoft believe are some best practices around adoption and change management, especially as it relates to customer success. So let me jump right in, right? So here's what I'm planning to cover today. So the first thing is, what is adoption and change management? And this is mainly because there's varying opinions of what exactly it means. The second thing is the why. So as a CSM, why should I care, right? The third thing is around the how. So how does it actually work in practice? How do we use it at Microsoft, and how you can use it in your orgs as a CSM? And then finally, some practical takeaways that hopefully you all find useful in your day-to-day role as a CSM. So that's the agenda. Please feel free to type in questions in the chat. We have enough time at the end. I'll try and answer those towards the end. So a little bit about me. So I'm a customer success manager at Microsoft. I'm based in Singapore, but I cover the APAC region. I focus on business applications, which essentially is Dynamics and the Power Platform at Microsoft. I've been in the CSM role for the past 4 years. So around 2 years at Microsoft. I used to be at Zendesk before that. And then I've also spent several years in consulting in KPMG Singapore, Deloitte US, and 2 other companies prior to that. So in terms of my certifications, I won't go into all of that, but I will talk about ProSci a little bit later. So we do practice the ProSci change management philosophy at Microsoft, and you will see the term ProSci coming up a fair bit in this session. All right, so let's talk about the first topic, which is what exactly is adoption and change management. Again, not rocket science. I'm sure a lot of you already know what this is. So it is just me sharing my perspective. Hopefully, you get some new nuggets of info or some things you hadn't thought about earlier. So here's what adoption is not, right? So it is not an email that's sent out on Monday for a training session that's on Wednesday for a go live happening on Friday. So this is absolutely the opposite of good change management and adoption. Unfortunately, we do see this in a lot of companies and projects, right? So very often, change management is the sort of the forgotten stepchild almost. There's very limited focus on it, and then it's a last minute rush, and there's some token training that's provided. A couple of emails are sent out, and you just assume that your users are ready for go live, but that's very far from what actually works in practice, right? So here's what we consider, the as how you define adoption, right? So adoption is essentially very simple. It is habitual use of, and I think a lot of listeners will be from SaaS and PaaS companies. So in a SaaS context or PaaS context, especially, it really is habitual use of the SaaS or PaaS system, right? How do you achieve it? So this is key, right? So the key word here is individual choice, which essentially means that every individual, so not a team, not a department, not a company, but every individual really understands the why, then he or she decides themselves to do it. They know how to do it, so they're empowered and they have the knowledge to figure out how it is to be done and what the change entails, is able to do it in practice, and most importantly is going to continue doing it, right? So once you roll out the change, how do you reinforce it? How do you make sure it's sustainable? And how do you make sure that your users are actually have actually adopted the change, right? So this is absolutely crucial, especially in a in a CSM context, I feel. So adoption can again mean very different things, right? So here at Microsoft, we use a mix of these three. So it's a busy slide, but let me just cover at a high level, right? So deployment essentially is your usage. So if you have X licenses, how many are in use? It's a straightforward number. At Microsoft, we call this MAU, or monthly active usage. I'm sure you have in your companies, you might have slightly different terms for it. I've seen daily active usage, weekly active usage, and so on being used as well. The second thing is the depth of adoption, right? So yes, you are using X number of licenses, but is it being used in a healthy manner? What's the percentage of licenses? So if you have 100 licenses, what is the actual percentage that you're using? How deep is, has it sort of been penetrated into your org? And finally, it is the breadth, right? So even if you're using a license, there's going to be multiple features, functionalities, and so on within it. So, how many of these are actually being used? And here again, the key word is sticky, right? So, are they using the right set of features to really drive up that stickiness? I think which all of us are sort of striving for. Let me move on to change management. So here again, I've seen very different perceptions of change management is. So a lot of people often confuse change management with change release management, which is the ITIL term, and it's totally different, right? A lot of people think of change management as just training. So I train my users and I'm all set. Uh, so this is how we define it at Microsoft. And again, this is based on how ProSci defines it. For those who don't know, ProSci is essentially a research-based approach to change management. So they've collected a ton of data globally, and we are pretty big fans of that approach at Microsoft. So we do use it a fair bit. So for ProSci, it is the process, tools, and techniques to manage the people side of change. So the emphasis is on people to achieve the required business outcomes. So again, not rocket science, but just to sort of re-emphasize that the people side of change is absolutely key, and very often we see that that sort of tends to get forgotten. So just wanted to reiterate that. This is pretty straightforward, right? So we all know it's a journey, right? So you're in your current state, there is going to be a transition, and your future state looks quite different, right? And it really is a journey. So and a process really. So and it's up to us to sort of be the champions of coaching and helping our customers through this entire change as CSMs. Just to reiterate the same thing again, right? So people change. I think this is really crucial thing. So organizations don't change, but people do, which essentially means that change doesn't just happen by chance, right? So it has to be managed at every step of the way. Um, I think we all know that people are different. which means you can't have a blanket approach that works for everyone. You need to tailor your approach. You need to treat everyone as individuals and not as a mass or group, right? And it's very, very natural for people to resist change, right? So they really need to know the why and the WIIFM or WIFM, which is essentially what's in it for me, right? So, and I think this is true for all of us as well. Anytime there's a change in our day-to-day work, whether it's a process, people change, tools change, I think all of us care about what's in it for me. How does this make my life better, right? So we do try and emphasize this with our customers as well. That really drill down on what's in it for your end users. Why should they actually support this change and embark on this journey with you? Okay, so the next thing is, as a CSM, why should I really care about adoption and change management? So the three reasons for it, three reasons for why a lot of projects fail. Um, this and it's I'll let you read the slide, right? But it really comes down to lack of adoption. A lot of project managers, a lot of companies, a lot of CSMs will say, "Oh, but we had technology challenges and we had process challenges and so on." But a lot of those can actually be overcome, right? So I think the single most reason why projects fail is really lack of adoption. So, which is why I think we as CSMs are play a really crucial role in actually driving that and ensuring the success of any project or any transformation. So, I think we all know, customer success depends on realizing value, right? So, a customer is successful if they are realizing value from your product or solution. We also know that the value that's realized depends on adoption and usage. If you're not using the system, if it's sitting idle, you're not really realizing value from it. And so, adoption and usage, of course, then depends on preparing, equipping, and supporting your end users or employees through their personal change journeys. So, I just wanted to highlight the how closely tied together value realization, customer success, and adoption actually are, right? So you can't have one without the other. So it really is they're sort of interdependent on each other. So customer success is really about adoption and usage, and how do you empower your end users through their personal change journeys. So why do this? Again, it's not rocket science. It's fairly intuitive, but as I mentioned earlier, you don't ensure it, but you do increase the odds of the project success. You can help. It helps you to manage pushback and resistance from employees. You capture, of course, you capture ROI, but you also capture the people-dependent ROI for a project, and you build change competency in the organization, right? So anyone who's gone through a complex transformation and a project and been involved on the change side of things, he or she are going to leverage those skills for future projects as well. So it's a long-term skill that you're building within your org. So it's absolutely key as well. Okay, so the the graphic at the top is really what we think the change looks like, right? So you have your current state, you transition, future state, and you get all the benefits that you were promised when you embarked on this journey, right? The reality is a bit different, right? So during transition, you have your upheavals, your ups and downs, and so on. And the future state ends up looking like a block of cheese almost, right? So there are holes in there that need to be plugged, and a lot of it is because the the adoption and change and comms journey has not been managed properly. So to me, this was a bit of an aha moment when I first saw this. So the I'll just explain what this graphic is, right? So the y-axis is just increased and decrease in resistance. So increased resistance, decreasing productivity. The x-axis is just time, right? And again, this is based on a ton of research by ProSci. And so the three layers are essentially your comfort zone, worry, and then uh, flight risk, essentially, right? So typically, anytime there is a change that's happening, you're in your comfort zone, you hear about the change, there could be a rumor, so maybe it's not through the official channels, but you hear rumors of the change and you worry, right? You think, oh, okay, is it going to impact my day-to-day work? Is it going to impact my job, right? Will I lose my job? I've heard there's this newfangled technology coming in. Is my role at risk, right? So that happens, which can lead to dissatisfaction, can lead to a loss in your productivity, and so on. And this is sort of normal, right? You do expect some of that anytime you roll out a change. So that's not uncommon at all. The challenge often is this, where you have different teams, different departments reacting to this very, very differently, right? So you could have a department A which gets back on track really, really quickly, but you could have a department D where maybe you didn't manage the change well, or maybe you have unique employees or unique leaders in that department, and that leads to the bottom, the red zone, right? Which is something you want to absolutely avoid, which is turnover, which is a tangible impact to your end customers, active resistance. So people actively push back on the change. They voice their discontent. They refuse to use the new system or platform and actively opt out of the change, right? So this is why it is so crucial to actually have a robust change and comms plan. I see there's some questions coming in. That's great. I'll answer some of those towards the end. Please feel free to keep chiming in. Feel free to give your feedback, comments, any other questions you might have. Happy to answer those. So coming back to the third part of today's session, right? So we've gone through the what. So what is adoption? What is change management? We've gone through the why. So why is it important? What is the risk of not doing it? Now, how do you actually get started, right? How do you actually get your hands dirty and figure out, okay, how do you actually do this? So when you start off on any new transformation or project, right, there's a few questions that you need to answer. So the first one is quite intuitive. Why are we changing? What are the risks of not changing? The what's in it for me, which I spoke about earlier. How will I personally be impacted? And of course, if you're a manager or you're a user champion, how will my team be impacted? Right? So these are, and there's many more, but these are some of the key things that you need to sort of think through and prepare for at the start of a change. But if you notice one thing, right, there's one question that's completely missing from this list, and which is, what are the details of the change itself? And I just wanted to leave you with this thought, right? So very often we focus on the specific details of the change, that here's what's changing, here's how you do it, and so on. But we focus on all the other things I spoke about just now around the why and the what's in it for me, and so on. So any change in comms plan that's created must first address the first few questions, that the employee directly cares about, before moving into the what, before moving into the specific details of what the change is all about. So adoption is a cycle, as I think as most of us know. I think most of us as CSMs create adoption plans, success plans, and so on, right? So it's a very simple sort of a process. You create the plan, or you decide on what the goals are. You assess, you create the adoption plans, you execute on them, you measure success. I think the key thing is remembering it's a cycle. So it's a continuous rolling thing, right? So you monitor, repeat, and keep repeating. I think that is the most crucial thing here. So change management doesn't stop. So even if the project is over, even if the change management work stream has sort of disbanded, you still need an ongoing change champion or change leader to really drive that ongoing change management activity. So this is the approach we use at Microsoft, right? So, and this is again a ProSci framework that we use called ADKAR. So ADKAR stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. I won't go through the details of each. You can easily Google this. There's enough materials online on ADKAR and how it works in practice. But these are typically the different stages that you go through anytime you introduce a new change, right? So the first step is making everyone aware of what the change is. The second step is building that desire, and that's where the what's in it for me really comes in. The third thing is the knowledge, right? So here's where your training comes in. The fourth thing is ability, which is okay, I've been trained, but how do I actually get my hands dirty, actually start using the new tool or system? And finally, as I mentioned earlier, reinforcement. So you have to keep reinforcing the change. A big aha moment for me again when I did the ProSci course 2 years ago was the fact that any new messaging needs to be repeated 5 to 7 times for it to be actually absorbed by our end users. And to me, this was a big aha moment because I'd never thought of it that way. In my head, I thought, okay, if I'm saying something 5 to 7 times, that seems like overkill. I think my audience is going to just get turned off by it and say, okay, this guy's, just repeating the same nonsense over and over. But there's enough research to show that it actually works, right? So especially if you use different modalities. If you use different comms modes like some email, videos, WhatsApp groups, all hands sessions, and so on. Um, the key things that you want to convey, the key message, you do need to repeat that 5 to 7 times. I think as human beings, typically, we only really absorb and process it if it's repeated 5 plus times typically. So to me, this was a huge learning. And even in my day-to-day role, when I'm working with customers, I try and sort of adopt this best practice. So again, just to reiterate the same thing, using the same 5 to 7 times thing I mentioned earlier. So the traditional approach used to be one size fits all. Everyone, here's how you roll out a tool, everyone's using it, and that often led to a huge gap between business and IT, right? So I think all of us are, especially at Microsoft anyway, are moving to a more user-centric approach. So focusing more on the individual, focusing on specific jobs that are impacted. What are the differences between different functions, different teams, different end users? And this really leads to a closer alignment between IT and business. And there's enough research again to show that typically around 84% of your end users are going to eventually get used to the new ways of working, right? There will still be 15-16% who are laggards, who will push back, resist, and we have other sort of strategies and approaches to tackle those, right? But I think at least 84%, and again there's a spectrum there, right? So you have the early adopters, you have the early majority, late majority. So how do you sort of make sure that you're covering all of these different personality types is absolutely key in any new change management strategy. Okay, so this is my last slide in the section. It's a really busy slide. I know, my apologies for that. But here's again, just to make it a little more real and practical, right? So these are the 8 change levers that help drive adoption and change management. Uh, the first one is exec sponsorship. This is, I can't reiterate this enough. This is the single most important success factor in making sure a project is successful or a change lands. So having that exec sponsor and having an active exec sponsor is absolutely key. having coaching, so having managers, supervisors deliver coaching, having a user, a change champion network. Uh, the middle two are, as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people think of this as change management. So having a calm strategy, and of course delivering training, whether it's train the trainer or end user training. But this is really just a fourth of all the change levers you need to think of. Um, the sixth thing is around resistance management. So, as I mentioned earlier, people are going to resist. It's perfectly natural. How do you plan for it, and how do you actually mitigate that risk? The seventh one is around measurement. So, how are you measuring the whole process via user groups, feedback surveys, and so on? And then the last one is again absolutely key, which is how are you gamifying the whole process? How are you rewarding right behaviors? How are you, how do you recognize certain users who adopt the system early, who help out their peers? Uh, yeah, so these are, again, apologies for the busy slide, but I just wanted to drive home the point that there are at least eight different things you need to think of, uh, beyond the typical comms and training. Okay, so hey Ryan, do we have a minute or so?
Thank you, Rahul. It's great presentation. I can see a lot of comments here.
I have
Making.
one more slide, just on key takeaways, and then I'll take questions after that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I thought you finished that already. Yeah, sure.
No, no,
Of
no,
course.
no. Yeah, so just a summary slide. So even if you ignored everything I said earlier today, just wanted to leave you with a few key takeaways, and hopefully this is helpful. So the first thing is deciding on, from an adoption perspective, deciding on what you want to drive. Right? Is it deployment? Is it the depth? Is it breadth? Or is it a mix of these? Or is it all three, possibly? Right? The second thing I can't reemphasize enough is starting early. So getting involved even before the customer is signed, ideally, but if not, at least when they, sign and kick off the whole journey, right? So being involved right at the start is absolutely crucial. Uh, driving the answering the question, what's in it for me, from an end user perspective. Expect pushback, expect resistance. The key thing is planning for it, right? So as I said, resistance is natural. All of us tend to push back on any change that we feel is forced down on us. So it really is about planning for it. As I said earlier, repeating every key message 5 to 7 times, and this is not for your entire comms, right? It is only the key messages that what you want your end users to sort of take away with them. The last thing was around, I didn't mention this earlier, but again, this was an aha moment for me, which is resist the urge to use the project team or a shared mailbox to actually reach out to your end users. So employees or users really want one of two people that they want to hear from, right? It's either their direct manager or supervisor, or it is the exec sponsor, who's often a C-level person. So um, I've been guilty of using like a shared mailbox to send out, comms and so on. So avoid that. Even the project manager should ideally not be sending out this stuff. It should be the end user's direct manager or the overall exec on the project. All right. I know I'm at time, so thank you very much. That's the end of my session. Ryan, we can take questions.
Thank you, Rahul. I thought there was a hint for me for me to come up with this live
No, no,
Q&A
all good,
session.
all good. Yeah.
Cool. Yes, as mentioned, now it's live. Now it's time for the live Q&A session. So please feel free to post your comments and questions here for Rahul. I can see questions from Shuyamu about 20 minutes ago. So he or she's saying some customers come up with a lame reason for low adoption, stating they can only take the horses to the water but not make it to drink it. What should be the one response to such customer, and what are the some of things that one can do?
Thanks, Jamu. That's a great question. So Yeah, this is super common, right? And again, you can't
It
really
happens all the
blame
time.
the. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So again, I spoke about resistance management earlier. So this is where having that strategy comes in, and there are different ways of doing it, right? You can have a carrot and stick approach where you sort of drive the right behaviors via like a rewards program, for example. You use coaching, so you have their direct managers actually coach them on why they need to go through this change. And you could potentially have a stick approach as well. I mean, I avoid using that, but so there are different ways of doing it. But yeah, this does happen quite a bit. It really is up to the exec sponsor and the change team to figure out how to do this, right? You can't say, oh, sorry, our users are tough, they're busy, they can't actually do this. It's up to you to actually figure out, and it really comes down to what's in it for them, right? Anyone will change if they are bought into the change. So as long as they see some value in it, it could, if I'm a salesperson, it could be, oh, I can retire my quota faster. If I'm a call center agent, it could be something like, oh, I reduce my handle time, or I get finish more calls in the day, I go back home early to my kids. It could be anything. So it's really that. But yeah, great question.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that, Rahul. We got a question here from Kathleen. I'm just wondering, is there a particular adoption template that you can recommend?
Yeah, so here at Microsoft, we use a lot of ProSci, right? So ProSci has their own templates. So we typically use those. And it's not just one template, right? So there are literally, I think, hundreds of them. So it really depends on how complex you want to make the project, or rather how complex the change is, right? So there are so many different assessments you can do. There are templates for comms plans, for coaching plans, for yeah, there's like a whole range of them, and you can actually Google them. So if you just Google ProSci change management templates, you can actually see a few examples of what we use at Microsoft as well.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, we also have Cam Marsland here. Really agree with your aha moments about the 5 to 7 times thing, and he said that's why onboarding can take 5 to 7 weeks to get momentum, and I assume that a lot of people here can agree on that as well.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. And Alex here's he got a questions here. What is the relationship between adoption and change management and onboarding? Can you share a bit more details on these three?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, onboarding, I would say change management is obviously a very key part of onboarding,
Hmm.
but they are not the same thing, right? And also, just because, as I spoke about earlier, change management is an ongoing process, right? So, onboarding is something you do for the first few weeks, months, and then you sort of step away. But then managing that change on an ongoing basis. So I spoke about ADCAR earlier, right? So the final R was reinforcement. So even if you've done with the change, even if there's no additional changes coming in, you still need to keep reinforcing the change. So it goes well beyond the onboarding phase. But yeah, great question, Alex. Thanks.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, everyone. We might still have time for one or two questions if you would just put your questions here. And as you can see, Rahul's been answering all of them pretty well. And yeah, I have one for you if you don't mind, Rahul.
Sure,
This
please.
another
Yep.
questions that been discussed quite a lot yesterday. So especially in a SaaS model now, customer success has become more and more as a revenue driver in a lot of companies. So what's your opinions on that, and how has you taken that embedded in your strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, there's no easy answer to this, right? I mean, the different companies approach customer success very differently. In some, it is, you use a CSM for your renewal. In some, you have them actually responsible for on-sell, cross-sell, and so on as well. and in some it is purely business value, adoption, and so on. So in my view, and again, I'm speaking based on how we do things at Microsoft. The customer success manager is not responsible for upselling and cross-selling typically, or renewals as well, right? So the it's a very tenuous connection between the role and any revenue generation. So, and the reason for that is simple. If I as a CSM, I can go to a customer and clearly hand to heart say that I don't have a sales metric, they are going to trust me more. That is just how it is, right? So if I recommend a certain
Obviously.
feature or two, or a type of product that they don't already have, they know that I'm not incentivized to do it versus a sales guy who is obviously trying to retire his or her quota. So in my mind, they should be totally separate, but it also depends on scale and so on, right? Where the org is at any point in time. If you're a startup, you don't have the luxury of having separate teams to do renewals and on-sell, cross-sell, and adoption. You might have the same person doing all. I think Microsoft being a giant, we have that luxury. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. Thank you, Rahul. And yeah, we got time for one more question here from Fikriana. Welcome back again. So, according to your experience, Rahul, what kind of change levels that you highly recommend to do in order to drive adoption?
Yeah, so let me actually see if I can jump back to that slide. So these were the 8 overall levers I'd spoken about. As I said earlier, the single most key one is exec sponsorship. I've seen so many projects fail because you had all of the other things sort of covered, but there wasn't that active exec sponsor, right? So even at Microsoft, right? So if we know that there's a change coming, and say Satya Nadella is the face of it, the odds of us actually adopting to the new ways of working are much higher than some project manager somewhere who's the face of the change that we've never seen or heard of, right? So having that exec sponsor to me is the single most key change lever. The other 2 or 3, I mean, of course, you need comms, of course, you need training. Those are pretty intuitive. To me, the rewards bit is also really, really crucial. I think we as human beings just respond naturally to sort of incentives. So I think if we can incentivize the right behaviors, to me, that is a really important lever as well. Yeah. But yeah, great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Great answer. Great questions. Yeah, great sessions, Rahul. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Sinead, Fikrana, and everyone who's tuning live. Again, a big thank you, Rahul, for this wonderful presentation and a very engaged live Q&A session. I'm sure all of us have learned a lot from your session. Thank you for doing this with us again. Cannot
Thanks,
say
Ryan,
that enough.
and thanks everyone. Feel free to find me on LinkedIn. Happy to chat more offline. Thanks for your time. Bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I'll look forward to meeting all of you in our next session and the rest of the festival. All right? Cool. Take care. Don't go too far. And again, connect Rahul with LinkedIn. I'm sure he'd be happy to open up for connections and answer all other questions if you still have one. All right. Take care. Take care, everyone. I'll see you guys soon in about 20-25 minutes. Bye.